And we are back on. Meredith, I always thank my lucky stars that we are doing the show together because you bring excellent content. And we've knocked out, I don't know how many shows in the last year. But anyway, what are we talking about today?
Well, we're going to be talking about basically providing for your animal's future upon your demise, which is usually a subject that most people don't want to talk about.
Oh, yeah.
But in my journey with my mules, I have learned so many things about life in general, and it has become apparent to me that we will never run out of things to talk about.
Right.
And what really makes our podcast unique is that we do cover so many different kinds of subjects, and we do it in detail. And we do it with the idea that we want people to be able to have the information that we've discovered on our journey.
Right.
And how important that is to make life pleasant going forward, because here we are getting older and doing the jobs that we started out young with and vibrant and physically able to do are now becoming a little bit more difficult. And so we can offer people a lot of information to help make these jobs easier and less expensive. So, because a lot of times we come up with ideas that really do cost a lot of money, and it kind of defeats you right away. Like we started out way back when talking about how our mules were eating the board fences and sitting on the wire fences and shorting things out, and how expensive it was to replace those things.
Yeah.
But we've had podcasts about those kinds of things and how sometimes it is important to go ahead and save the money, or even take out a loan if you have to, and in order to get more efficient fencing and a more efficient way to spend your money. So spending a little bit more up front will end up costing you a lot less in maintenance going forward. That's why I went to steel panels and vinyl fencing with a hot wire on it. My mules no longer tear up my fences. And so we don't really have to replace boards and wire all the time anymore. And maintenance costs have gone to zero. And the other thing is, when you look at your routine like this, you also realize that what you feed your animals is important. The times that you feed your animals is important. They are animals that really respect routine and love it. And this takes care of a lot of their anxiety, which cuts down the resistance that you will experience during training or pleasure riding or anything you want to do. One of the things that is the most common is bolting, bucking, and running. And when you don't have a routine way of dealing with your animal, this is what you're going to get.
Right.
If you're not patient enough to slow down and do things right, and I do mean slow down and save the money to buy things so that your fencing is what it needs to be. Slow down so you can research all about the way you're feeding the animal and what might be causing any things that are not good for your animal. For instance, I found out that eating different feeds that were hyped up to be better and everything, and then packed on a lot of fat and everything, just didn't seem to have the effect that they told me that it was going to have. I ended up losing 11 animals to poor feed that was jacked up, and didn't really give it the thought that I should have about mules and donkeys being desert animals, so you want to minimize the less feed that you give them.
Sure.
And particularly treats.
Right.
They don't need apples and carrots and horse treats and things like that. For one thing, they're not going to work for them very long, so you can't really employ a reward system of training because it'll only work for a limited amount of time. This is another case where if you feed regularly the way that we describe with the oats mix, the show glow vitamins, the Mazola corn oil, and the grass hay only, don't use any excuses for it. Go out and look for it. I had to actually actually take 122 acres of my 132 and a half acres and turn them into hay fields so I could be sure to have the grass hay that I needed. And because I was buying hay, but it wasn't. It was good for a while, but then different farmers do different things. They sell their property, things change. Then all of a sudden this farmer doesn't have grass hay anymore. And the last thing I want to do is compromise the health of my animals. I love them. I care about them. They deserve a good life. And so that's what I have always tried to provide for them. It's another reason we do this podcast. We want other people to get pleasure from their animals and know that they're healthy. And in doing so, you might think that, oh, gee, I got to buy this stuff all the time and it's hard to find and all of that. But if you learn to educate yourself about these things, and that's easy to do because you and I have put out a whole lot of information about what is best for the animals.
Right.
And yes, there are a lot of different ways to feed your animal, but I came to the conclusion that there's good ways to feed your animals. There's better ways to feed your animals, but there's only one best way. And I think I have discovered that, and the reason that I say it is because I've got 16 animals right now. I've got 12 mules, 4 donkeys, and 2 horse and 1 miniature horse. Actually, 3 donkeys and 1 miniature horse. And they're all getting very old. They're all basically, for the most part, except for just maybe a couple, are over 30 years old.
Yeah.
And they're healthy. They're not costing me anything but vaccinations in the spring as far as vet bills are concerned. No colics, no founder, no ring bones, side bones like the draft mules did when they came in.
Right.
And like problems that I used to have when I was feeding all these highly marketed feeds. There's something to be said, and even looking at the kind of wormer that you use. Now, they told me that they would become immune to the ivermectin, and what I discovered instead was that worming my animals every other month with ivermectin and then breaking it up in November with Strongid took care of all the worms. I never saw any worms in the manure, so there wasn't really anything to do a fecal sample on because there were no worms in the fecal. You know?
All right.
So, but the other thing that I've discovered, Sadie was over at Hearts and Horses for 17 years, and she was one that I donated, and she retired and came back here, but they didn't worm every other month like I did. They wormed with fecal samples and stuff like that, and not as often, and when she came back here, we put her out with, let's see, it must be 8 other mules, so there's 9 other mules in that pen, or 9 mules in that pen, and during the summer, we use fly masks on those that need them, but the flies that hang on them, it just seemed to be minimal. We used Farnham Tritech 14 fly spray during grooming once a week, and when the flies got thick, then we would use it twice a week, making sure we cover the whole body and everything. But when I got to Sadie the first time, her legs were covered with what looked like shipping boots done in flies, and a big band of about probably 4 inches wide, the length of her belly all the way from the front legs up and underneath the hind legs. And so I went ahead and fly sprayed her, and they all dropped off. Farnham fly spray, Tritech 14, will drop them right out of the air. It's really good.
Right.
And so cleaned her up that one time and wormed her with the ivermectin and didn't have flies like that, not ever again. She didn't smell good to them because I guess the ivermectin, my guess would be, a certain amount of it, when you do it every other month, it becomes somewhat systemic. And I think that they even smell better. They don't get the stinking like they do when they're eating a lot of different products and you're using a lot of different products. When you use the same thing all the time, then they have a consistently nice smell to them. And oats smell good, I'll tell you what. Their breath is always good.
Good, yes.
Yeah, and flies, they like manure, they like stinky things, so they don't hang out on them as much. And the other thing is, too, when you keep them in a dry lot or a dirt pen most of the time and then limit their turnout time to a maximum of 5 hours a day, I don't turn my donkeys out at all. If they want to eat grass, we go for a walk.
Oh, yeah.
Because then they can just, we stop. I don't let them snatch it. I'll stop and say, okay, you can have a couple bites now. Because I know they miss the grass and they like to eat the grass, but they can't be out there for even 15 minutes that they don't just explode into obesity. And so I haven't had any trouble with the donkeys either, with any colic or anything like that. Not obesity, certainly. And we've managed to rehabilitate Chastity with her huge neck that was broken over when I got her. Now it's staying pretty good. So you got to think about all this stuff that you do. And as you go on and learn it, it becomes not as time-consuming as you thought it was going to be. I got to do this much. Oh, it's going to cost this much. And you kind of run yourself down thinking about all this negative stuff that might happen, I might add. That really, if you just keep researching things, and I've done most of the work with all the research I've done since 1980 here in Colorado, and then 6 more years before that with mules in California, I found out what all the good things are to do. And what's the most expensive way to feed your animal? What's the least expensive way to feed your animal? What's the most expensive way to train? Just get in a hurry. That will take up a lot of money, because what's going to happen is you're going to try to train. Your animal's going to get resistant. You're going to end up fighting with them.
Right.
Then you think you got to send them to a trainer.
Right.
And I still contest that the best trainer is the owner.
That's right.
Because that's who they bond to, is the person who trains them. That's the way to get the best behavior from them, the least resistant. But you have to be patient enough to break everything down into little tiny steps and abandon the idea that you want to get them ready for riding so you can go trail riding with your friend. You'll be able to do that in 2 years if your animals respond the way mine do to this training program. It might even be less than 2 years. It might only be a year, depending on their prior experience. But it teaches you more than anything how to get along with each other and how to do the things that are easiest for both of you at the time. And it just builds on itself because it's a sequential and logical way to approach training. So you're not just grasping at things out of the air and asking them to do something where they're just going, what? You want me to do what?
Yeah.
I'm leaving. That will cost you money and cost you time and make you very frustrated, not only you, but the mule as well. And you think about all these things, and we both now are putting our heads together and what we've both learned on both our journeys and offering it to the general public. So I've had people ask me, well, why don't you and Cindy do it on camera? Well, this is an audio podcast, and there's only so many podcasts you're going to be able to watch of us sitting in chairs talking to each other.
Right.
That doesn't make a whole lot of sense anyway, because we have all this stuff available in our books and videos. My take on the podcast is that we can give you an awful lot of information on the audio, but this also offers a different venue for you to be able to learn more. Because if you're sitting there watching us and listening, you're probably not paying as much attention to what we're saying. Because if you're looking, all of a sudden you're distracted. I've had people tell me, oh, I am so glad that you and Cindy are doing an audio podcast, because now I can put you on and listen to you while I'm cleaning the barn or grooming my animals.
Yeah.
Or driving in the car. So it's another way that I can continue to learn, because there's so much to learn. And then when I get to where I can ride and everything, if I want to have more information about what you're talking about, or if I want to see it in action, I can just get on your website and look it up, and you guys have all that information up there for free. And if I want to buy the books and videos, I can, but nobody's forcing me to do it.
Right. Mm-hmm.
So that's why I think this audio podcast is so great for people, and I think that the way we're delivering it is the right way to do that. We're giving our audience as much as we can to help them to have as much fun and enjoy their animals as much as we enjoy ours. And we're learning a whole lot about what it takes when we educate ourselves about these subjects and research what other people are telling us. Then we could be firm in our commitment about why we think that what we're doing is the best way to do it, and offer that to our audience. And in doing so, I know I've got a lot better with my communication with people and explaining things to people, and I'm having a lot more face-to-face conversations with people so that they can ask me questions right there when we're together. When we're not together, they feel more confident in calling me or emailing me, because it's a more intimate way to communicate than putting your face in a phone. To go through the computer is a bad way to go. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
It was originally designed to enhance communication, but as it turns out, it has really isolated a lot of people.
Right.
And there's a lot of distractions up there that will keep you from really learning, or even make you want to learn. Well, you think you're carrying around an encyclopedia in your pocket, so you get a little lazy about what you do with your reading and your research. And then you don't get any better at reading, you don't get any better at research, and you don't learn as much. And then you agitate your mill.
Yeah. There you go.
And they are committed to letting you know when you are agitating them.
Yes.
So that brings on a whole other subject, is as we age together with our animals and we get older, we start worrying about what are we going to do if we go before they go.
Oh, yeah.
That is a really difficult question and a very touchy subject.
Yes.
And thought it was going to be easier than it was, and it turned out to be a royal nightmare. It was a Pandora's box when I opened that up. Because first of all, like I said, I've got 16 animals right now, and if I go today, do you think there's 16 people to take my animals? I don't think so.
No.
No. And then you start thinking about, well, will they treat them the way that I do? And will they remain healthy and happy? And no.
Yeah.
Not really. And then I
Right.
built this ranch into this huge thing, and then that became an issue when I talked to my attorney about my last will and testament, because I didn't know if my family, the members of my family, would want to inherit this, and would they take care of it? Because this is now the Loveland Longears Museum and Sculpture Park at Lucky 3 Ranch. And the way my family is, they're not rural, they're urban. And they're all about the money, and I think they would probably sell the animals, sell the property and everything on it. And that horrified me to even think about that. So I talked to my attorney about what we could do about that. If I wanted to will this to other people, they need to be willing to do it, but are they going to have the money to do it? Well, you know the old saying, horse poor. So taking on an equine is a whole lot more expensive than taking on a cat or a dog from somebody. And even those can become problems if people aren't used to them, or if they're allergic to them, or things like that. There are just all kinds of things. So I talked to my attorney about it, and we decided that what I needed to do was make this a 501c3 foundation. In that respect, then what I could do was I could actually keep the crew that I have that's been with me for 20 years. So, and this would also force me to get very meticulous about what I did, because there are certain requirements to having a 501c3. You have to develop a mission statement to make it legitimate. Our mission statement was to teach people, at-risk kids and younger children about the care, maintenance, and handling and training of equines in general, and not just mules, but with the primary focus on mules. The focus being like that would ensure that my animals would be part of the 501c3 and would be guaranteed a place in the whole foundation. They would be taken care of. That kind of helped me to feel a whole lot better. The other thing that I had to decide was who was going to take care of them. If I just developed the foundation, they would take on employees that could be anybody. This is when I decided that my crew would be best, so I would have to make provisions for them, since they'd had the experience for 20 years. Grabbing people from anywhere, you couldn't guarantee that they would do a good job with their health and welfare.
Right.
They could mismanage it, and it could all fall apart rather easily. The crew that I have here is not a large crew, and it has gotten even smaller lately. And right now, I've only got one girl and two guys that help me with everything here at the ranch with this whole operation. The whole operation encompasses 132 and a half acres, 16 equines, 122 acres in hay that we cut, bale, stack, and store ourselves twice a year. In addition, we have to preface that with cleaning the hay barns and prepping them to receive the hay and store the leftover bales from last year in our hay sales barn. And then afterwards, we need to sweep the fields, gather any broken bales, and bale whatever's left that we can to store with the rest of the hay. That's a tall order. We just this last year did 11,000 bales during our first cutting. It's ordinarily between 5,000 and 6,000 bales a year. We grow our own hay for our equines because we can't be sure to get the quality hay we want from other sources each year. With the urban sprawl and the farmers being run out of business by developers, we can't be assured that there will be hay from year to year. The hay growing space is shrinking drastically. The other thing is people do grow different kinds of hay, and the brome and orchard grass hay that we grow for our equines is actually the best for them. This has been an experience that we have learned over time. I hear people every day that tell me they can't find good grass hay for their animals. Mules and donkeys, being desert animals, have to have a very specific diet, or they can easily become obese, and then you have all sorts of problems and vet bills up the yin-yang.
Right.
If they don't just die. It's really easy to mess up that program. The people that have been with me have been here for more than 20 years, like I said. We all operate as a team and not by how many hours are put in. Rather, each day is gauged by the tasks that need to be performed, and we do not call it a day until the list is completed each day. We all pitch in to help each other when one person has more to do than the others. Each person has their own specific job description, but we all pitch in together when it's time to do the hay during hay season. The two of us girls welcome the opportunity to get out of the office during hay season. The weather's always lovely, and working together is just plain fun. Doing house and office work can get rather tedious when it's so repetitive every day throughout the year. We try to keep up morale by changing up the schedule every so often. There are a lot of things to do, like answering the phone, answering people's questions, taking orders, booking tours, distributing orders, keeping the bookkeeping straight each day, making social media posts regularly, checking the website's connections. And we have two websites, both the LTR website and the Jasper website, keeping up the inventory cards in the warehouse, and updating all the records for the attorneys and the accountants. We also celebrate birthdays with our fellow workers, including our remote graphics artist, our two videographers, and with our Jasper mascot, who handles the social media and behind-the-scenes website help, all the connections and everything. That's his specialty. So he donates that. It's just really important to keep a happy and enthusiastic crew. And when you have people that are willing to help each other to get it done, and everybody's good at what they do, it only takes a fraction of the time. So you really don't get things going better by hiring more people necessarily. I used to subscribe to that thought, and I used to think I had to be the boss. But I have changed my way of thinking. That, again, was due to the journey with the mules. The mules like to do things together, and they like to help. When you're cleaning the pens and the stalls, they're right there to pick up the rake if you lay it down, or if you have a truck out in the pens and you are picking up manure and you walk away to go do something and you have other tools in the back of the truck. They will be happy to help you, so they get in the back of the truck and unload everything, spread it all over the pen. But that's a whole lot more fun than having to just consistently go around picking up after other people that don't want to help. The mules, when they help, they don't create that bad a mess, and it only takes a few minutes to clean it up. But if you're cleaning it up every day, that's the other thing, too. You clean up everything every day, and you don't have as big a mess to clean up, so it doesn't take as long. Rather than having people come in here for public tours, we've learned to schedule our tours by private appointment only, which is another welcome time to get out and interact with people who come to the ranch to see all that we do. This is also due to the fact that they increased insurance costs for having instruction on the ranch, training on the ranch, boarding on the ranch, and all of those kinds of things, where the government gets the money, the businesses get the money other than yours, and you end up spending a whole lot of money and don't get the full benefit from it. This way, people can still get the benefit of clinics and of the teaching that I can do, because when they come to the ranch for a tour, we let them see a movie, a half-hour movie, all about mules and training methods and how the ranch grew and everything. And then afterwards, I'll spend another half hour, 45 minutes, speaking about the training approach and why it works so well, and how core strength training with a reward system is much more beneficial to the animals and produces a quiet, a calm, and obedient animal that really enjoys being with you and doesn't want to run off all the time. So they get the benefit of the clinic sort of setting, although they don't have their animals there, but it really doesn't matter. I think it's more beneficial that they don't come with animals that are not performing at a level where they can do what the people want to do in a clinic. You want to do obstacles, you want to do reining patterns, you want to do riding activities, but I had one of Richard Schragg's groups here with 15 animals and 15 riders, and we did an assessment class, and one of my friends who was schooled in my approach came to help me, and out of 15 horses, there weren't any that would pass for core strength to do what they were asking to do under saddle. They were all bumped down to stage 1, hourglass pattern leading, because their core strength was completely absent. And this is what causes a lot of soreness in a lot of animals, is when you skip building that core strength. And that can only be done with leading training. And it's not much fun to do at a clinic. People don't want to come to a clinic where they paid a lot of money and then do nothing but lead their animals around.
Right.
By giving the talk about it and telling them about how important core strength is and what we do to build it, and how that builds a foundation from which to work and do any kind of performance that you want to do, then it's guaranteed that you're going to be successful when you go out to train for gymkhana or jumping or English Western pleasure or driving even, all these other things. Because if you get the core strength on your animal in good posture, they're going to have a foundation to go on to do anything that you want to do, and especially mules that are so versatile. So it works really well. Having the tours come through gives us the incentive and gives the guys incentive to really just go ahead and clean the barns every day. Make sure it's clean. If a tour is coming through, then what they're going to see is an immaculate place. They clean the stalls, the pens, the barns. If there's veterinary issues with the individual equines, any construction that we have in the works, stockpiling different things that we use regularly, maintenance and repairs, where we won't need their assistance, the guys can just go ahead and keep up with what they're doing while we're doing the tours. And when we're inundated with 20 people or more, then the guys pitch in and they can drive the tour carts and they can engage with the people that are there and talk to them and give us more people to interact with the people and to keep them from running every which way because they, oh, look over here, they start running off. And we can accommodate people with all kinds of issues. A lot of people are on oxygen, a lot of people in wheelchairs, canes, walkers, and all that kind of stuff. So the guys are really handy, for helping out those people too, while Kristen and I are answering their questions and everything. So it really gets us engaged with the people that come to see us, and they really like that personal attention. And keeping things clean every day also helps keep down the flies and the insects that would irritate the equines as well as our visitors. When they come to visit, people always remark about how good it smells here and how much fun it is. And there were several cases where we had a few ladies that came in wheelchairs, and the way we keep the place is so immaculate that there were areas where they could actually have wheelchair races. So they got engaged in that while we're running after them. No, come back here, stay with the group. Oh, do we have to? Yes, you have to. While other ladies are getting loaded onto the carts and everything, and Steve is driving, and they all love Steve.
Yes.
He looks like Fabio to them,
yes.
And they beat each other off with their canes to see who gets to sit next to Steve. It gets really fun. It's just fun. But since we are a museum, we are always in the process of developing new exhibitions and construction of the new buildings to house them. We don't want to find ourselves in violation of our 501c3 status. So we established our 501c3 status in 2006, but we didn't want to be limited to government standards while improving the ranch, because they would have us paving the roads, which is not a good thing to do when you've got equines around that you're riding. They slip on asphalt. They get skinned up on concrete. So the other thing is they would have us building handicap bathrooms every 100 feet, and things like that. Before long, it would not look like a ranch. So I asked about what we could do to keep up our autonomous construction of the ranch the way our vision was. And I was told that legally we can remain a 501c3 foundation by simply keeping it a bank account that donates to other 501c3s. So we've supported several other 501c3s during the years, and we've been in operation ourselves as a 501c3, but we're now limiting our donations to our favorite charity foundation, the Hearts and Horses Therapeutic Riding Center. I've been with them for over 26 years, and we have also expanded that operation that started out as just therapeutic riding for the disabled, but now it's thriving as not only a therapeutic riding center for the disabled, but we're also able to provide for veterans, at-risk kids, those with Alzheimer's and dementia, physical therapies after surgeries. We have summer camps for kids to learn about equine management and riding lessons. So, and we have won multiple awards for our work with Hearts and Horses. It is probably the best in the world for what it is. A lot of people have a lot of things they just, either being disorganized, not having enough donors. There's 1,000,001 reasons for these other entities not being able to be developed as well as we managed hearts and horses, but as we managed with hearts and horses. But again, it came down to being thoughtful about what we were going to do next, how we were going to build it, what's the best way to do it with the lowest maintenance. And right now, for instance, we have a limited number of paid workers, but we have worked up our volunteers to 250 or more while serving 800 clients. So, and with our organized, efficient way of working, these people are getting the best services possible, and we also have other things they can participate in and that the volunteers can participate in. We have classrooms over there that we built in that will accommodate people that just want to come and learn. And we also we're set up so that we have an area outside the outdoor arena where friends can sit and they can watch their family and their friends while they're having their therapy. And that gives kind of a feeling of family and camaraderie all the way around with not only the executives, but the staff, the volunteers, the clients, their friends, their family, and anybody they want to bring along as a guest to watch and see what we do. And it makes for a really warm and inviting place to be. I legally guaranteed my crew's jobs as the staff of the Loveland Longears Museum and Sculpture Park at Lucky 3 Ranch, and I hired an attorney that clearly set up the Loveland Longears Museum and Sculpture Park bylaws and mission statement for the 501c3 status, and another attorney that did my last will and testament, such that this was all very explicit about my wishes upon my death, so they would be able to keep their jobs. And we all know how expensive our animals can be, so it was advisable to include a stipend of money to accompany the care of the animals so that the designated recipient of these animals, and in this case my crew and taking care of the foundation, would not be burdened with the cost, but would actually be paid for it. So if you're doing it on a smaller level, you may have people that will offer to take your animals on, like they agree to adopt children upon a friend's demise. You can make sure that they are not biting off more than they can chew by setting up an actual contract that will designate how many animals they're going to take on, what they're going to do with them. And then if you're really routine in the way that you manage and care for your animals, you'll be able to put that in writing in a contract so that they will have that on hand on how your animals are to be managed. And if there's going to be money involved, you can put that in there too, and you can even put it in to be increased as inflation increases each year and the cost of living increases. You just need to be a little bit more proactive about thinking about, okay, what are you really taking on here? And what are you handing off to your friend? And you want to do that well ahead of the game, because putting all this stuff together takes a lot of time and a lot of effort and a lot of documentation. And it has to be in writing. And the other thing you have to do is you have to check on all of the laws in your state, in your country, and make sure that you are abiding by them. Because, for instance, now with the urban sprawl, properties are not as large as they used to be, and there's not as many people that are equipped to take on rural animal maintenance and training and riding and all of that. The other thing you need to do is stipulate whether you want your animal ridden by somebody else or not, or if you just want to care for them. And you would have to stipulate the whole training program the way I've got it lined out too, that they're not just thrown out in the pasture, because they can get sick from that. So these are a lot of things that you need to think about and have it put down in writing, and go over it very carefully with whoever's going to take, with the recipients of the animals and your estate, and with the lawyers that you're using. And the lawyers can advise you while you're talking about all of it and tell you, yeah, you can do this, no, you can't do that. In the once rural areas where there used to be a lot, you could get a large lot, they're honing them down, and it seems like the largest lot you can get anymore where you might be able to keep an equine is 5 acres. And then it just goes down from there. And you might be able to put in a 6-stall barn, and you think, oh, well, I'll only have 2 animals, and I can use the other 4 stalls and board other people's animals. But like here in Colorado, you can't do that. They've already, the city and county commissioners have made their say, and they have said, no, you cannot do that. And if you decide to do something like that, then that constitutes commercial business, and it'll cost you $15,000 to do it, and most people can't afford that.
Right.
They want to board those stalls out so they can help pay their mortgage, for God's sake.
Right.
But these people that come in don't think that way, so you can't. And when they initiated this, it was about 15, 20 years ago, we used to have a lot of large boarding stables and riding facilities here, and when that came through and all of these people came in and made all those regulations, laws, and all the rest for urban people, a lot of those boarding stables just up and moved out of Colorado and moved to Texas, where they were able to do that. The things they wanted to help support their lifestyle. They wanted their horses. And with the developments going up, as I pointed out during the meetings, because they did go to those meetings, I told them, I says, you developers want to have all these houses for all these people. Well, out of all those people, don't you think there are some people there that would really like to have a horse and would like to keep it close by? Oh, yeah, I guess that makes sense. But it wasn't enough sense to have them give an inch for the people that were willing to provide room for the people to board their horses in these smaller acreages. So they just kind of went away. So you can't make any assumptions about what should happen about your death after you're gone. If you don't do the things as meticulously as I have done, anything can happen and your animals will suffer. Any shortcuts are done, or somebody decides they can't take care of them and they want to sell them and give them to somebody else, and then if it is all legal, they can still legally undo it, because all they need are new commissioners to change laws and do it in their favor. You can't predict any of this stuff. So just make sure that your recipients will be fully aware of what they're signing up for. You need a clearly stated document about the way you care for your equines, so the recipient will know exactly what to do with your animal when they inherit it. How to feed, hay, oats mixes, worming, minerals, exercise, maintenance in a dry lot with a limited turnout, social time, training expectations. This is critical for the health of your mules and donkeys. Otherwise, your animals may not be cared for as you desire. Not that you will know necessarily, but you may unleash a lot of headaches on somebody that you really cared about. Your assets will be at the mercy of other people's opinions and desires. You need to know that going in. People can be very selfish in this way. People often believe that you can just turn out in a pasture and that's good enough. Not. Mules and donkeys are very susceptible to obesity that will usually follow with founder and other things like ring bone and side bones. Poor management is generally due to owner laziness and misinformation that's freely passed around. It's not always their fault. It wasn't my fault when I picked up a lot of things that I didn't do right either. I've learned over 50 years. It's taken me to learn all that I've learned. And like I said at the beginning, that's why I documented it all and why I put it in so many different venues to make it available for everybody. The beginning owner, the 4-H kid, the person that just wants to go trail riding, the people that want to learn to show, people that really want to challenge themselves and go 50 miles in endurance. Maybe some don't want to ride, some want to drive. And they need direction and guidance in all of those things. And the number one reason for it is because your animal bonds closest to the one who trains them.
Right.
And that cannot be substituted. Some of the most dangerous stuff that's going on now, too, are the things that are being marketed in the name of being better, researched in labs and all of this. I've done extensive interaction and communication with numerous vets, chiropractors, massage therapists, people that are in college for nutrition research and all of that. And one of the things that my vet and I have discussed in detail, just ad nauseum, is the dehydrated cubes and pellets that are being offered, different oils, minerals, and the amount and types of grains, treats, etc. I did my field research with 32 animals over a period of 40 years. And one of the most devastating things that I found out firsthand is I thought, oh, well, they're getting older. They need to have hay cubes and dehydrated pellets. Well, it took all of the hydration out of their digestive tract. And then people told me, oh, well, just water down the hay really good that you give them. Well, that's not enough. I mean, to push all that feed through their digestive tract takes gallons of fluid going through there all day long every day. And no matter what these marketing people tell you, you cannot substitute enough from the outside. So stick with the old-fashioned stuff. Now, I know that Show Glow vitamins are pellets. Yeah, but you're only giving them an ounce of them once a day.
Right, right.
And you're giving them good feed that will induce the desire to drink a lot of water. Those kind of things keep them going. I have not been able. One time, I think I used electrolytes in the water to induce them to drink. But after that, I realized that if I just feed them the right stuff, they drink. If I give them the right minerals, the trace mineral salt box, the trace mineral red salt box are the only ones I've ever had to use. I don't think that trying to measure mineral powder is a good idea, because who knows better what they need than the animal.
Yeah.
So I just make sure that everywhere they're going to be, there's a red trace mineral salt block sitting there in a feed bin. So it's not sitting in the dirt. I just get those little buckets, the rubber buckets or the stainless steel buckets or something to put it in so it won't get dirty, and just make it available to the animals and give them the right feed and right grass hay and right kind of grain. And as far as I'm concerned, there's no other grain except oats. Just make sure they're broken open.
Oh, yeah.
They can't digest whole oats. People say they do, but they don't.
Right.
They come out the other end. You can see them.
Sure.
I don't get this. That's common sense.
Right.
If you put it in and it comes out the other end, it went through.
Mm-hmm.
And when I feed them crimped oats, cracked oats, steamed oats, or rolled oats, I don't see anything in the manure.
Right.
You know, I mean, that's just common sense. Other common sense, too, is I can't make a living selling books and videos, so I gave up trying. I thought it was more important that people get the right kind of information about care and maintenance of their animals and feeding, and a lot of people don't have much money. So I have tried to keep the prices down on my books and videos, and if you look around, you're going to find that they're cheap. They're probably the cheapest that you can get, but they've got the most information in them.
Sure.
And yeah, and you and I are putting out a lot of free information on our websites to make it possible for these people to get the information they need to keep their animals healthy. So they go, oh, well, you know who her father is. Well, let me tell you this. My father helped me buy this property, but he really didn't like equines all that much. He's a totally urban person. And so everything I've done here, you know, is separate and apart from what he does. And so, yeah, I get a nominal amount in his trust fund when he passed in 2000. But that was not going to pay for what I've managed to build here.
Oh, yeah,
right. I had to get creative, and the one thing I can say is that my dad was an inspiration because he was so creative. And I used to talk to him all the time, and I worked in his office for 2 years and learned all the ins and outs of office work. And he told me a long time ago, just said, how am I going to do this? You know, you wanted me to be a lawyer or a doctor, and I kind of flunked that. I didn't like college at all. I probably have enough credits for 2 degrees, but they're not all in one master. They're strewn out all over the place.
Right.
And I've got a lot of college racked up under my belt. But, I think I'd like to go and do this. I think I'd like to go and take that, And I ended up, I had equine science pre-vet training here in Colorado when I got here. But before I got here in California, I did a 4-year college course in 2 years for a psychiatric technician's license, which is a registered nurse with basically with a psychiatric degree. That's where I learned all about behavior modification and how it worked, and thought, this should work with the mules.
Right.
And it did.
Right.
So I think I got a lot more knowledge getting all mixed up like that, and then just getting the experience from the mules, because they kept dragging me down this road and dragging me down that road where I had to learn this and I had to learn that. But the money thing was a little challenging. I had to get creative about how to manage my money as well. And I kind of got onto that it's smart to make investments. And so I got involved with an investment firm, but I didn't have a very clear idea how that worked. So I got involved with them, and then they threatened to let me go because I said, well, you're supposed to make money for me, right? I invest my money, and then you invest it in something that's going to produce a dividend, and then I would get a dividend, right? And they said, well, that's the way it's supposed to work, but you're spending more money than you're making dividends. And we've had you with 7 different brokers, and we're going to give you one more chance with one more broker. So they gave me the broker that I have today that's been with me for 35 years. And he told me what the rules were, and I had to learn. So I learned from him that I would treat the account with him as if the account was not even there. Now, he's from UBS Financial Services, and they have done so well for me, and particularly him. I started with a minimal amount and then just let the dividends be reinvested. I never took any money back except if I got into trouble with my taxes and I had to borrow money from that account.
Right.
But when I borrowed it with the understanding that I would pay it back right away. And so I always put it back in a very short period of time. I thought of it as not my money in my own mind. And that kept me from going out and overspending, which I had to do because he threatened to drop me if I didn't.
What?
Over several decades, my financial advisor turned my original $500 into millions with that attitude.
Wow.
And it's not unlike the attitude that I had learned from the mules and the maintenance issues, and learning that it would be better to go ahead and spend the money, a little extra money right up front, to save money on the maintenance, because that's what I ended up doing. And then I had more money to send to my broker. So it turned out that I was actually learning how to make money in a very roundabout way. But my mules were leading the class. They were my teacher. They taught me what I had to do, what I could do, what I couldn't do. Don't be such a cheapskate, because I'm just having a ball on this fence. So it's like, don't get your panties in a twist over the cost of everything. Just think a little bit more clearly. Do your research. Educate yourself. Be willing to cut loose with a little more than you had bargained for, but not more than you can handle. You have to know what your limitations are, too, and don't get in a hurry to do things. Realize that you can break it down into very small steps. And that's what I did with this place. When I bought it, it was only 10 acres. It was an 850 square foot farmhouse. I had three-sided sheds, all fenced in, cross-fenced over probably an acre, and then a great big pasture over the rest of the 10 acres, and it was all fenced in barbed wire. Oh, that was a scene. But that was also a remarkable opportunity for the veterinarian to come and sew up all my filleted animals. But I thought, oh, well, I guess the fence needs to go. And I can't wait too long for that. So that has to be the first thing that goes. But I even have a funny story about that, too. I had to get a hold of a skid loader eventually, and I did. And I had a guy that I hired to take down all that barbed wire fence. And so he went out there, and it was around the perimeter of 10 acres. And I told him, now be sure that you tie that up tight when you bring it up here to the barn. And he was gone all day long. I couldn't figure out what happened. I went out there, and coming up the road, I saw him coming up the road on the hayfield, but he wasn't moving. He never put a tie on that barbed wire, and it sprung open, and it completely encompassed the skid loader and locked him in.
Oh.
I had to get some wire cutters to get him out.
Oh, my gosh. Oh.
Well, and there you go on the kind of people that you can hire. You got to make choices on that, too, and don't hire people that don't have experience in what you're doing.
Yeah.
There's a lot of lessons to be learned, and I used to, after a while, I decided that I was going to go ahead, and I wasn't going to do the interviews, the hiring interviews anymore. I would just take people out to the corral and have them go interview with one of my mules, and if the mule ran away, they weren't hired.
You bet. You bet.
It's just kind of like that. These guys got a lot of stuff they can teach you. But when you're looking for a place for your animal to be, ask the person that's going to be the recipient. The two of you've got to look into the location on where they live. Are they going to live there for the rest of their life, or do they expect to move? Laws are different everywhere, and it's important to research these legal regulations for a full understanding of what is needed to pass your equine on to a new owner. Then, if they're okay with it, get a good attorney, and I mean a good attorney, not just somebody that's looking for something to do,
right.
To draw up the agreement between you and make it all legal. Do not just draw up an agreement with your friend and sign it. It won't hold water in court. And laws change all the time, too. So what may hold in court now might not hold in court later.
Right.
So you want to look at what laws have been rather stable and opt out for that way to go. Put yourself in the worst case scenario and do it for the worst case scenario. And this is why I opted to go ahead and spend the money and the time to do it right and make this into a foundation. It might have did take about 2.5 years to get all this legal work straightened out, both for the 501c3 bylaws and mission statement, and I've been reviewing it every year since 2006 because things change every year.
Yeah.
But because I did all of this, I remembered while I was doing all of it, and that was because I didn't want to be worrying about what's going to happen to my animals. And after doing all this the right way, I know for sure that I will truly rest in peace. And just as a little caveat, I wasn't quite sure, whether I wanted to go in a cemetery or be cremated upon my death. And I had to make that decision. And so I asked my attorney, I says, so any ideas on what I should do? I don't think there's going to be much room for me in any cemetery. And he said, well, I had a client that put their ashes in a bronze statue.
Cool.
Yeah, I thought that's a really cool idea. So I asked Robin Laws, we have the Sunny Dressage statue out in the front pasture right by the house, and I asked her, I said, do you suppose you can put room for me in the top hat? And she said, of course I can. So that's where I'm going to be. Upon my departure from this world, I will be in the top hat of the Sunny statue looking over this entire operation now to eternity.
All right. And I'm so glad that you're not going to be made into a hitching post.
Well, now that would have been quite creative.
Well,
but not tall enough to oversee everything.
Right. There you go. Well, that's pretty neat.
Yeah, I hope that this podcast helps people to decide and do what's within their budget so that they can lower their own stress about it.
Yes.
Because that's really the most important thing to do. And the other thing is if you just can't come to any resolution on this at all, given the way the world is and the unpredictability of the people out there, I think that I would be tempted to put in my will that my animal be euthanized on the day that I passed as well. Because I would rather know that they're going to be okay.
Yeah.
And I'll just meet them in heaven.
Yeah.
And I know that would be a hard thing to think about, but it's harder for me to think about them possibly being abused because I'm not there to take care of them any longer.
Sure.
But it's whatever you're most comfortable with, and it has to be your decision. But what I'm saying here is just make sure that you have a legal document describing everything, not only for the legalities of the county and state that you're in, but directions and guidelines for the people that are going to take on this responsibility.
You bet, Meredith. This is really good information, and wow, this is very helpful.
Well, the mules told me to do it.
All right.
As they usually do.
That's right. Well, my stomach is telling me to go to lunch.
Sounds like a good plan to me.
Meredith, thank you. And you have an awesome day, and we will talk soon.
Sounds great, Cindy.